I thought I would share a story of my dad's. Our family has many stories where none of us can quite explain it. To non skeptics, we believe we are definitely clairvoyant to some degree. My parents tell me stories from when I was younger. I'm not supposed, I'm not as in tune to it as they are, but this story of my dad's is from his growing up in a small town outside Toronto. The boys in the story, many of them, now fathers and grandfathers, refuse to discuss this story unless they're all together. Had a few beers and the lights are turned on. Other than that, it is not talked about. The house I am referring to has two parts of the story. My dad and his friends had gathered in the basement of Jason's house. I have changed all names for privacy. And we're doing what kids at the time did, smoke cigarette butts that they stole from the ashtray and playing games and toys. One of the boys had found an Ouija board. With little else to do, they decided to play with it. They begin with the silly starter questions like, does this girl like me at school like me? Will I pass the English test? And then they decided to get more brave. Is there a ghost down here? Yes, the Ouija board led their hands to the answer. All the boys giggled, thinking this was fantastic. Are you a nice ghost or a bad ghost? Yes, the Ouija board said back. Jason smacked the question asker in the back of the head, explaining that Jerry needed to find needed to ask simple questions. Are you a ghost? No. The boys got quiet and one of the lights in the basement let out a loud pop before the corner of the basement went dark. This is the mid-60s and this home was pre-World War I. Light bulbs were going to pop. Are you a bad ghost? Yes. A second light popped on the opposite room. Only one light remained in the basement above the boy's head. What's your name? They watched as the board began spelling out letters, with one of the boys keeping track. William, it says William, the boy yelled out. They felt a flood of air surge through the room, and the next part none of them could explain. The air moved the Ouija board across the room, and all the boys stood up and backed across the room. Staring at a lone mirror in the room, only they did not see their reflection. They saw an older man with dark black eyes and a long beard with circular lenses staring back at them. They all started to yell, "Go away!" And the mirror slid off the wall and shattered before the last light went pop. The boys went back upstairs and refused to play in Jason's basement ever again. Flash forward to many years later, Jason's mom had sold the house and moved across town, and Jason and my dad were left to pack up the home. That included the basement. My dad kept loading boxes, and people had been in and out all day helping. When he got downstairs where a man was standing by the washboard, not doing anything but just standing, naturally he asked the man if he could lend a hand. The man stared back. He seemed to have a glowing look to him, but my dad chalked it up to the basement lights. He seemed... The man said nothing, but my dad continued to grab boxes and taking them upstairs. He saw Jason and told him there was some weird old man downstairs. Jason was white as a sheet and said the moving truck isn't back and no one is here but us. They both went back downstairs and saw the same figure, only it was slowly walking from corner to corner of the basement with his back turned. Excuse me, who are you? Jason asked before the man began screaming. My dad describes it as a deep yelling that got louder and higher pitched, like a kettle screeching on a hot stove with flickering lights. Both of them couldn't find their feet and stood there, and suddenly it all stopped at once, as soon as it started. They turned to look at each other and back to the figure, only instead of being at the other end of the hall, it was standing right in front of them. They could smell something that reminded them of sick, and could see every line on the man's face, but there were no eyes. They finally turned to run and let the movers return and do the rest of the work. They only shared single glances, and they were reminded of that night as children when they were sure that they had saw the same face with black eyes. When Jason was unpacking boxes and found the old photo album and flipped through it, he saw a picture he had never seen. His mother told him that was his great uncle William, who had lived in the house a long time ago. William had gone crazy and drove two of his three children. The daughter was with the mother, and when his great aunt Shirley came home, she found him in the basement where he had hung himself. But over his face were scratches where his eyes had been. There was no doubt in their minds that they had seen William, and one of the reasons why Jason's mom finally decided to move was that in the bathroom, quite often she would find water all over the bathroom, which she thought was a part of faulty plumbing. But the boys are sure that it was William.